They were about 3 blocks away from their employment. They had stopped. She was a passenger in the front seat. Her coworker was a driver. And they stopped and they were waiting to turn left when a transport truck driver hit them from behind. He was distracted, using his cell phone, having an argument with his girlfriend. Totally unavoidable accident, and pushed them into the oncoming traffic, where they were hit yet again by another vehicle, T-boned, and they were both killed instantly. And that is the day that my life was shattered into a million pieces.
Welcome to Lost and Found. Today we have Linda Henderson. Linda, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me as a guest on your podcast, and it is my pleasure to be able to share my story. I always refer to it as my love story about myself and my daughter.
I feel like it really is a love story. Do you want to start by sharing a little bit about your daughter and your loss?
Sure. My daughter, I always love to talk about my daughter. I can talk about her still because she's still my daughter and I'm still her mama. My daughter, Andrea, was 27 years old, pregnant with her second baby, and she had a 2-year-old little boy. She was happily married. They had just built a house in August of 2011. They were excited, and she was just at the prime in her life, where happily married, had a little boy, you're planning your family. She was a social worker working in a group home with young girls who had been through the foster care and had had very rough lives. And so she was trying to, that was her job, to work with them. She was actually a teacher in their program called New Directions. A lot of the girls had very poor reading levels, and Andrea was a teacher and helping them in their life. She was out with the 2 girls this one day. It was just around Christmas time, December 20th. And she was with her coworker, and they had raised money with these 2 girls, and they were very happy. They had just called the office and said, look what these girls have done. They were so proud of them. They were going to adopt a child, and they were on their way home from being in the community with the girls. They were about 3 blocks away from their employment. They had stopped. She was a passenger in the front seat. Her coworker was a driver. And they stopped and they were waiting to turn left when a transport truck driver hit them from behind. He was distracted, using his cell phone, having an argument with his girlfriend. Totally unavoidable accident, and pushed them into the oncoming traffic, where they were hit yet again by another vehicle, T-boned, and they were both killed instantly. And that is the day that my life was shattered into a million pieces. I just wanted to die.
I feel like when loved ones are taken so abruptly and unexpected, it just completely changes everything. Like you lose a piece of yourself.
Oh, absolutely. It took 6 hours before we were texting. Andrea and I were texting and having the usual mother-daughter conversation. And, her kind of job allowed her to be able to use, text and talk to me during the day because, the girls would be busy doing their work or whatever. And she had texted me and told me what they were doing. And we had texted back and forth all evening. The accident was about 12:30. And then we said our I love yous, as we always did. And then I sent a message and it was not responded. There was no response. And so then the anxiety built, and at first it's like, come on now, Linda, relax, she is at work. And then as time went on, when she did not pick up her little boy at the paternal grandmother who was babysitting him, that is when I knew something was seriously wrong, because her husband hadn't heard from her. I hadn't heard from her, and she would never not pick up her child. He was her pride and joy. And so what had happened is that because they moved, she procrastinated and she forgot to change her address. So the police went to her old address. And so that's why it took 6 hours before we really knew what was going on. Finally, by about 6 o'clock, I said to my husband, I can't stay here. I can't take this anymore. I need to know. I said, I'm going to her job, her work, her place of employment. My husband didn't want me to go because he knew that I was probably erratic at that point. But I went, and when I was about to turn, I saw a sign on the road and it said road closed. And I knew then. I mean, I knew in my heart something was deeply wrong. And my cell phone rang. I didn't have hands-free, so I pulled over, and it was my husband. And he said, "You need to come home. The police are here." Now, I'm a retired nurse. I know that if she was at the hospital, which I was 10 minutes from, he would have said, "There's been an accident. You need to go to the hospital. Andrea's there." Well, when he said, "You need to come home," I knew that she was not here. And so I drove home on a major highway at erratic speeds, and it was truly one of those moments of the Carrie Underwood song, "Jesus Take the Wheel," because I don't know how I got home. Anyway, I got home. They didn't even have to tell me the police cruisers were here. And I just called them liars because you've got the wrong person, right? I didn't identify her. She's my daughter. Her husband didn't identify her. You guys have the wrong person. This is not right. Total denial. And the fight-flight mode. And then I just pounded my fists on the officer's chest, lost control, and collapsed. And the last 13 years have been me rebuilding my life without my daughter.
When you say the denial, when I got the phone call about my mom, I kept asking, like saying to the ENT, "No, check again. Like, I don't think this is true," because her friend had called me and said, "I think your mom died." So because she said think, I was like, there's hope. She's alive.
Yeah, there's still that last little bit of, like, you're not talking about the right person, right? This is the wrong person, because you have to hold on to that little glimmer, right? But then I think we just go into that fight and flight mode, and just, it's devastating. It's devastation, right? It's like 9 years into my journey, I wrote my first book, and that's when it was a pivotal moment in my life when, it did take 9 years. I found new purpose. I'm passionate about reaching out and telling my story and providing inspiration. My book, The Road of Love and Hope, it is a memoir, and it is about my journey of child loss and grief. It was pivotal for me because it took me 2 years, but I wanted to reach out to people from a heartbroken mama's point of view. And I wanted it to be easy reading, because I remember in those first 6 months, I was born and raised in a Christian home and believed in heaven and, believed that's where Andrea is, but it's like I needed reassurance. So I wanted to read books on near-death experiences, so I read as many books as I could get just to comfort myself. And one of the books I read was by a psychologist, and I'm thinking I was a nurse for 37 years, so I can understand all this medical jargon, no problem, right? And I started reading it, and it was so confusing. My brain, my grief brain just couldn't handle it. So when I sat down to write my book, I said, I'm going to make this as though I'm sitting and talking to someone like yourself, like this has just happened. This is what you need to do. This is how you're going to feel. And you're normal, and an easy read for someone to relate to and for it to help them.
To have some sort of connection during their journey.
To know that you're not alone. To know that you're normal. I remember feeling like I'm losing my mind. I can't think straight. I can't remember. I can't make 2 sentences to make a conversation. I felt like I was living outside of my body. You can see everything happening. You can see the people around you, and you feel your heart beating, but there's a total disconnection. And, it's brain damage, knowing now.
Did you feel that way when you first found out the news? Because when I relived the day that I found out, it's like I kind of was not there fully.
Yeah, total numbing. I remember I had to be highly medicated, and there's not really a lot that I do remember, but it is. You feel like you are not inside your body. It's just such deep devastation. I remember being in the flower shop and choosing all of these flowers for the funeral. And I remember walking in, and the smell made me nauseated. Even now, to this day, the trauma leaves lifelong psychological effects, right? And one of them for me is that I can't go into a florist shop 13 years later. Can't do it. Makes me sick. I love flowers. I mean, I treasure the memories. I embrace the moments of life. My husband makes fun of me because I take pictures of everything, because that's what grief teaches you, that life is so precious. And the only moment of time that we have is now, today. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here. So it's what you do with your time now that defines you and how you walked through this journey. So he makes fun because I'll take a picture of a weed. He'll say, "That's a weed." And I say, "But yeah, look at the beautiful blossom on that weed." So yeah, the devastation beyond, I believe in the beginning, that's the trauma.
When you first lost your daughter, how did your grief show up and how did it affect you?
Well, the trauma of those early days and planning, like I said, I was highly medicated and people just kind of basically had to tell me when it was time to drink, when it was time to eat. My husband stayed home from work for about a month with me, and basically I just slept and then I ate when he told me to eat. And you're so wrapped up in this trauma and the pain that you don't think about your physical body. I remember even when he went back to work, one day he came home to me and said, "So, when did you last shower?" "I don't know." "Right? When did you last brush your teeth?" "I don't know." Because the normal activities of daily living that we take for granted, that we do all the time, that is now obsolete. Slowly that changed. I prayed and prayed and prayed. I mean, I think grief, if you have a belief system, it gets destroyed for sure. And so even though it was destroyed and I was mad at God and how could you do this to me, I still prayed for strength, because you really have nothing else to turn to. Right? So you need faith and belief in something. And I believe that, my prayers were answered. And I, just had little glimmers of hope here and there. And hope doesn't happen like a big slap in the face. The hope for tomorrow doesn't, it takes time. Grief takes work, hard work. And as you face all of those emotions and you cry and you let those tears, you shed those tears, and you just, the tears are love. It's unspoken love, sacred tears of unspoken love. And so it's letting that happen. It's letting the anger that I had, the yelling, the screaming. Even to this day, I have triggers. I'll end up going out to the grocery store or something. And I don't know, some trigger will happen. Sometimes I don't even know what the trigger is. And it'll be like this big cloud comes over me. I'm going on my day and it's feeling okay. Like, "Linda, you're doing this, right? You're doing this for Andrea." And then I just feel myself shaking and I feel all the physical effects of an anxiety attack coming on. And then again, lifelong psychological effects, right? So it's just learning how to cope with them. So I'm sitting in the car and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't go in the grocery store. I can't. I feel weak. I feel shaky. And then it starts and it snowballs. And then I start crying and then I yell and I just sit in my car and I yell and I scream and I hold on to the steering wheel and I just let all of those emotions out. And that's what you have to do, because after it's all said and done, I do some deep breathing and then I'm ready to go on and deal with the next couple of hours of life. It's facing and dealing with the grief. You can't deny it. You can't smother it, because it'll come back. Whenever it comes back, it'll come back with a vengeance and you won't even know what happened.
Do you still experience that 13 years later? It coming back like that?
The anxiety attacks, oh yes, that's happened recently, especially for me from September on. From the time the first leaf falls off the tree, my mind knows, and my mind knows I'm going towards December 20th. And so I deal with depression. And that's when I have days when I just kind of say, "Okay, grief, have your way," and I stay in bed. Right. So yeah, today, like right this past, it was 13 years on December 20th. And sometimes, I can't explain it. Some years, they're just not as bad. The grief is there. The pain is there somehow, whatever the circumstances are, but this year, I don't know why. It was devastation all over again. And I really had to work at it to get through the season. Right. So yes, it does happen. 13 years later, it still happens. I mean, the frequency is less, right? We live our life. The frequency is less. And the depth is less. And I think it's like I wrote in my book, it's like when that deep darkness and the grief takes over, whatever emotion that may be, it's like if you physically fell into a big dark pit and you're there by yourself and you have to climb out, and it's, you're crawling and you're crawling and you can see the air above, and in the beginning you just don't know how to do it, and you feel so helpless and so defeated. And then as time goes on, I always say, it doesn't heal, but it teaches. It's a great teacher. And you learn as you experience it over and over again how to deal with the pain, how to pull yourself out of that dark pit. You pull yourself out, you go through it, but it's not the same as in the beginning.
In your grief journey, were there any unexpected emotions or feelings that popped up, or unexpected emotions that you did not see coming that kind of overtook you?
Well, it all did. Because, I can say some people might think, well, you were a nurse for 37 years and, you should know all about death. And I worked in hospitals, predominantly in hospitals, but in nursing homes and doctor's office. And the latter part was in community nursing, providing services to people in their homes. But in the hospitals and nursing homes, I mean, I've held the hands of family members as they've lost their loved one, right? I've held the hands of people as they've passed on. But at the end of the day, and it's gut-wrenching and it's, emotional, and I would go home and probably have a crying session over it. It's sad. But at the end of that, I can say, thank God that wasn't me, right? Was I prepared for this? No. I didn't know about any of those emotions: depression, anxiety, fears, anger, all of those things under the umbrella of grief. I might have studied about it in school, but when it's your personal journey, it's new to you. So I had to learn, and I had to educate myself, and I had to realize that it's normal. Because like I said, I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like I'm going crazy. Do I have to stay like this? Right? You wonder, do I have to stay like this? Is it going to get any better? In the beginning, you don't think it is. But it will. But it's about working through it. The worst one for me, I would say, is anger. That's something that I deal with a lot still today. But I would say the worst one is anger. Because, well, first of all, she's not here. I'm not angry at God anymore. I'm just angry because she's not here. Why did life have to happen this way, right? It's out of the normal life cycle. I'm not supposed to see my daughter die. Right? But I'm angry because she went, but I was also extremely angry at the trucker, because the trucker walked away a free man after killing 2 people.
I was going to ask you what happened.
Yeah. So what happened is, and again, I don't remember a lot of this. It took 3 years. So in those 3 years, I don't believe, and I've learned after writing my book, I did not grieve Andrea in those 3 years because I had that court hearing, and we live in a smaller town, and it was always on the radio and all about the trial coming up. And it was a 5-day trial, took 3 years. I sat through the trial, but again, was in another world, right? I don't remember a lot of the details. They had cell phone experts there, just horrible. But what happened at the end of the day was that the prosecution failed to submit some of the paperwork that the judge needed. So they could not charge him criminally, which meant jail time. He said, yes, I believe you caused the accident, but I can't find you criminally responsible. They basically charged him. In Canada, we have careless driving and dangerous driving, causing bodily harm. Careless driving is not criminal. It's like you don't get your license for a while and you pay a big fine and you might go to jail for 1 to 3 years. Dangerous driving is the criminal one, where you've killed someone and you go to jail for, 10 years. It's totally different than in the States. So they thought they would, we need to charge him with the biggest charge possible, but then they didn't do their job right. So he walked out a free man, lit up a cigarette, and I walked out and saw him, and that was that. Yeah, the anger is still, and I'm trying to work on it. People ask me if you've forgiven him, and I said, well, I don't know. I think it's one of those things that I push aside, and I really need to kind of bring it more to the foreground, because forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you, right?
But it's so hard.
Yeah.
Did he show any remorse?
No. He just, it's the same as walking into a shopping mall, right? Or say you walk out of a shopping mall and you see someone and they're walking and they just light up a cigarette, right? So he walked out of the courtroom, and, as he walked out, he reached in for his cigarettes and lit up his cigarette and walked on. When you're dealing with anger and when you're trying to, deal with it healthily, and you need to realize the root of your anger. And I believe that the root of my anger is him. So yeah, 13 years later, I'm still working on that one. Like I said, I believe in heaven, and I want to see my daughter again one day. So I'm not a bad person, I need to deal with those negative things, I believe. And I will. But I would say the first emotion that raised its ugly head in grief for me was anger. My goodness. I mean, in the beginning, if anyone was near me, I've never experienced such rage.
I experienced a lot of anger and still do with my grief. So I do understand that. I have let it out on anyone near me.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was miserable in the beginning. I didn't know how to deal with it. And you always direct it at the ones you love the most, right? My poor husband, I mean, he's an absolute angel. He's my godsend. And I was so miserable with him. But, the yelling, the screaming, the crying, the tears, just uncontrollable. And then, eventually you learn that grief can't control you. You have to control grief. It's always there. In my heart abides grief and love. The grief is there because of the love. But it's about allowing space for that grief. You're always going to have space for that grief. You're always going to have to relent and give in to those emotions. But it's about you learning how to control them and saying, okay, you know what, that's enough. You've had your space for today. I need to continue on. It's kind of like being in the car when I've had my anxiety attack. Okay, grief, I know you've done this. I know you've given me this anxiety attack, and I know it's all about Andrea, but now I need to go on and live my life. And it's hard.
When you did start to live again and realize that you needed to live again, did you feel any guilt living?
I never felt guilt for living. I mean, the questions in the beginning is, why didn't I die and not her? She should be here to be watching her son grow. She should be here watching in the beginning, watching all, the milestones, him going to school, everything. He is a blessing, an absolute blessing, but it's also a trigger. Not to mention the fact that he looks just like her. But every time something happens, all through the years, whether it's, graduation or high school play, like plays, Christmas plays, things like that, it's always, she should be here. Like, why couldn't it be? It's just a thought that, why, it's not so much, I don't say it as much now, why couldn't it be me? But in the beginning, like, he was 2.5 years old. So I'd say for the first 4 years or so, it was like, why couldn't she be here? I would trade places in a second, right? I've grown to realize that gratitude is a big thing, right? And gratitude changes your attitude. And you need to be grateful for every moment in life. Grief has taught me that, like I said again. I just experienced, my oldest granddaughter lives with me. She just had her 27th birthday yesterday, and she just had her baby boy 2 weeks ago, my 5th great grandchild. So I'm blessed. I'm so blessed. So do I sit and in sorrow and allow myself to be depressed that she's not here to be part of all those joys? Or do I just be thankful and enjoy all those blessings? I choose to live life, enjoy the blessings, and be grateful because I'm here for a reason.
When the loss of Andrea first happened, you said you were medicated. Were you living then, or was there a transition when you did start feeling the gratitude and living again?
Like I said, for the first 3 years, I don't believe I had an appreciation for life then. I don't believe that I tapped into what grief was teaching me then, because I don't believe that I even grieved her properly. I was living through all the triggers, like I said, of the radio announcements that were talking about this trial coming up. Also, I had another trial that ended at the same time. I had 2 trials going on, and the other one was my grandson. Her husband decided that we didn't need to see him. Meanwhile, I babysat him. And I was there, and we were very close. I was there when he was born, and he decided that we didn't need to see him. So after the first year or so, he was 3 in the spring. So we kind of put up with it for about a year until he was about 4. And it was just kind of sporadic. You can see him if, you can see him when. No, you can't see him. Like, it was like we had to have, permission. And, we always had to see him at the paternal grandmother's. We could never have him at the house here. We always had to go there. And then she had to get permission from the father. And it was just a real mess. I couldn't, that was just compounding my grief. So we took him to court, and we were told, in Ontario, there's no grandparent laws. And my lawyer and his lawyer, told us before it all got started, you're not going to win. You're wasting your money. This is not going to happen. And my response was, yes, it will. Because if I can't see him, if I can't see Tristan, I will die. That's all there is to it. And we won. So during those 3 years, we had both of those. So grief was on the back burner. So when did I start to, my new purpose and my journey of self-discovery started when I wrote my book, and me talking, doing podcasts. And I think that is like the pivotal point in my life when I was living my life before, just not giving deep thought to it. Kind of like, like I said, the activities of daily living. We get up. There's a lot of things we do in life that we just do it automatically. So I think after time went by, it was just automatic. You get up, you go to work. I never went back to work, but life goes on, and you start doing the things that you need to do. And then in between, you're feeling all the grief, but the actual gratitude and the value for life, and that's all since I wrote my book. Because I was just going to say, I learned a lot more after writing my book too, because I had to do research, and I had to put all my words correctly so someone could read them and understand. And it was healing.
I had read a quote, and it was something along the lines of, whenever I see my loved one again, I don't want to tell them I died when they did. And that changed it for me.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Because I kind of felt like a robot, and
yeah,
I had so much purpose before, and the life I had envisioned and the life I wanted, my mother was in. So when she left, I was like, none of it matters. None of it's going to happen. What is the point of doing any of it? So I tried to do the task and the things, but they either felt they were very unfulfilling, or I felt guilt living, because anytime I experienced joy or happiness, I immediately felt bad because I was happy and she isn't here.
And I think that's normal. That guilt is normal, because in the beginning you have to learn how to smile again. And when that smile breaks through, you have to smile without guilt, right? You do. You have to live life without guilt. But the guilt, I think, is a normal feeling. You feel guilty for enjoying your life, right? I remember going through that. I would be, say, at a birthday party of one of the grandkids, and I would have a great time. And then when it was all over, I would just have a breaking point, and I'd sit down and cry and think, like, why did I enjoy myself? Why, right? So that's all your mind trying to grasp the whole new world that you are now in. And it's
But
normal.
because it is a completely different reality when you lose.
Someone so near and dear to your heart.
Have you gotten any, I don't know if you believe in signs or stuff like that, but have you experienced anything that you thought was your daughter?
I am a real skeptic, right? But I've had lots of signs in the answer to that question, yes. But I do have to mention, and you know, I really don't care what other people think. I know. And it wasn't a dream, it was a vision. Because it was Andrea's accident was December 20th. I think it was after her funeral, and I was at home and I was in bed, and I was just, of course, beside myself, and I was crying endless tears and just underneath my duvet. And then all of a sudden I stopped. I stopped crying. You know, with grief, you can't all of a sudden stop it. But it was a very sudden, I'm not crying anymore. And I was in the dark and in my bedroom, and it was completely dark. And I looked up, and when I looked, I saw Andrea. And it was quick. It wasn't long, but I was highly medicated, as I said, but I remember every single detail of what I saw that day. And I believe that she came to me. And she was just standing in an open field of green grass that was long. And it was the greenest green that you could ever imagine, that I have never seen. And the blue sky was bluer than any sky you've ever seen. I mean, there's just no description to the color. The crisp blades of glass, and they were swaying in the breeze. And she had a white flowing dress on. She had curly hair. Her hair was blowing in the breeze. Didn't see her face. And beside her, she was holding a little girl with long, dark, curly hair. I know she had a little girl. I know that I lost a granddaughter. And I just stared. And I could not believe what I was seeing. And like I said, I remember the detail. It was not a complicated picture that I saw. It was the green grass. They were standing there, and the blue sky, not a cloud, nothing. And then after a while, it was gone. And I believe that she came to me and told me, "Mama, I'm okay, and here's your granddaughter." I say I have a granddaughter in heaven. Some people might think I'm crazy. Some people might think, that was just, your brain, you're messed up. But no, I believe that she came to me. And I believe that there are angels on earth, and that she works through these angels on earth. I believe that. I see signs all the time. Twice I've been in the shopping mall now over the years, and it's always around Christmas time when it's really difficult, because my goal for November is to shop, get everything done, and then December becomes my month. That's my month. I've taken care of my family. I bought all my gifts, and then if I fall, if I crash, then so be it. But I was at the mall this one particular time, and I was like, oh, this is just too much. I can't, the Christmas music, it just needs to turn off. I had a friend that used to go to the mall and put earphones on so she lost her daughter, and she wouldn't have to listen to the music that way, the Christmas music, right? But I sat down in the food court, and I started, and I was crying, and I was just, it didn't matter when grief takes over. It doesn't matter where you are, and, there's no reason to be ashamed of it. And I just sat there and cried. I didn't care. I've learned that over the years. And so I got up, and I was going to walk towards the washroom. And this total stranger, this young man, maybe 30 years old, he's walking with his mother, and he walked up to me and he said, "Do you need a hug?" And of course, your first reaction is, no, I'm okay. I'm fine. Thanks. No, seriously, I give really good hugs. And so he hugged me, and that man held me, and he let me cry, and just the warmth and the caring. I believe Andrea sent him, and I carried on with the rest of my shopping that day. So I believe that, yeah, I've got many stories to tell like that. I believe they send us signs. for sure.
I do too. I really do too. What would Linda today tell Linda very new in her grief 13 years ago?
I've said this many times. I would say, cry those tears, shed those tears, feel it all. There's no point saying one day, at that point, very early in the journey, one day you're going to feel better, because it's not going to sink into anybody who's suffering like that. I would say, just cry those tears. You have every right. Cry those tears. And when you stop crying, have a drink of water. And in between you have that drink of water, do some deep breathing and embrace that moment, because that's life creeping in again. You have to face grief. You have to work with it. It is the hardest job that you will ever do. But you have to work with it, because otherwise it will consume you. In the beginning, you have to just let it happen, let it all out. That's what I would say. Counseling may not be for everybody, but I would say really highly recommend counseling. And it's about timing, the right timing for you. And it's about finding that person that you have a really good, you develop a really good rapport with. And that can be, my counselor was my lifeline. You know, I could go there, I could be myself, I could talk about the last week and just ramble on and on and on and on. And she, you know, listened and helped me. I would say counseling is huge. I also went to a support group. Again, timing has to be the right thing. I went 6 months after. I don't think Zoom was a thing then. And so this was in person, about 7 moms, all lost their children. I thought, okay, you know, I mean, it's a great idea. In the beginning, it didn't quite work because it was only 6 months after. And I went in and they were talking and smiling and maybe telling a joke and laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is them, I know now, living their life. But they were all from different journeys in their life too, right? So I walked out and said, no, can't do this. Not ready for this. And then I went back probably another 6 months later, and I was in that support group until just before COVID.
Timing.
It's a timing, right? So there, you know, and I'd say just to the person that you're normal. You're normal. What you're feeling is normal. You're going to be angry and you're going to be depressed. Why am I sad? Why am I depressed? Because you don't have your loved one here, right? First of all, to be normal, shed those tears, feel the pain. You are normal, and there's no timeline. There's no timeline. Take your time.
Thank you, Linda. Will you share the title of your book again?
The book is called The Road of Love and Hope. I could show it here, but I don't know if I gave you a picture for your advertisements. And that is me on the road, and there's no definition to the road, and it's pretty rocky, and because you don't know where you're going when you're in grief. But the clouds are there, but the sun is shining through. The ray of sun is coming through those clouds, so the sun will always shine. The Road of Love and Hope, and it's the journey of child loss, and it's available on Amazon. I also published a book that Andrea wrote in high school. She had to do a project in grade 11. They had to write a children's book. So she wrote the children's book. I found it about a year later. You know, mother tucked stuff away. And I looked at it. And so when I did my book, I said, okay, I'm going to publish her book. So it's called Spooky Meets a Friend. It's about a little black cat that learns how to share. And written by Andrea Watkins, and that's available on Amazon too for kids between the ages of 2 and 6 when they're learning about emotions. And you know, well, you're upset and you're angry because Spooky was a cat, and the dog came in the home, and she was jealous, and she learned how to share. So that was one of my ways of honoring Andrea was to publish her book, because she originally wanted to be a journalist. So.
Well, I'm going to link both books in the description.
This is what it looks like.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so she wrote the book, and she did all of the illustrations. Yeah. So my daughter is an author, and she's not even here. But that warms my heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts or comments for anyone going through grief and loss?
Since I've written my book, I've kind of adopted my own little motto. Embrace the moments. Whatever those moments look like for you, embrace the moments, those moments of life. You know, if it means, like I said, you can breathe in between your tears, or if it means that you were able to get out of bed and shower, or if it means you were able to get up and go look outside and maybe even take a short walk. Embrace those moments, because that is hope creeping into your life. That is life coming back into your life, your new life, and it's hope. Right? It's hope that I had that moment, so I'm hoping that another moment will be just as good as this one. Embrace the moments. Cherish the memories, because those memories are moments in time that we spent with our loved one. Cherish the memories. Embrace the moments, cherish the memories, and by doing that, hope for tomorrow. It creates hope for tomorrow. Yeah. That's what I've learned in life.
Thank you, Linda. It has been such a pleasure having you and talking with you today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. And I hope that I can inspire, empower, that you can do this. You know, this world of grief is not a good one, but we have it within us to be a survivor. That's what I say. I'm a survivor. And I'm thriving.
We do. I'm going to end it on that, because that is a perfect ending for it. Thank you so much for watching Lost and Found. I really hope that this episode resonated with you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. There will be new episodes every Friday, and grief is hard, and you don't have to do it alone. And I love you, and I hope I see you next time.